Hello everyone, this is Sukruti Joshi from LG Institute of Engineering and Technology, Ahmedabad. I am going to take the video lecture series on chemistry. The subject code for chemistry is 311001. In our previous session of this particular subject, we have started our chapter number 6, which is fuel and combustion. So what is the meaning of the fuel and what is the meaning of combustion? So till now we have studied different fuels. Basically, fuel is a substance which when get combusted, it gives us heat or energy. But why? Why heat or energy is obtained when we combust that particular fuel? Because it contains a very good carbon network or carbon structure. So when we have a particular kind of carbon structure and when we break that particular carbon structure, it gives us heat or energy. Here we do it or we obtained it by combustion, right? What is the meaning of combustion? So combustion is basically burning a substance in the presence of excess oxygen. So combustion is basically an oxidation reaction. Each and every combustion process is always an oxidation process, but each and every oxidation process will not be always combustion. So make sure that whenever we deal with any kind of combustion process, it should be done in the presence of excess oxygen. Okay? In that particular substance or in that particular chapter, we have studied about the types of fuels also or classification of fuel also, right? So we can divide it mainly into two different parts. First is natural, second one is artificial, right? Natural is also known as primary fuel because it obtains or it is obtained in the nature as such, while when we deal with artificial, so that is a type of fuel which is obtained artificially from primary fuel or from natural fuel. So the source of any kind of artificial fuel is a primary fuel basically, right? We obtained it through the primary fuel only. This is the thing that we need to understand, right? Crude oil is a natural one, but from crude oil when we obtain petrol, diesel, kerosene or any other kind of substance, it is known as secondary fuel, right? Similar way, a gas, natural gas is referred as natural fuel. But when we obtain it or when we make a PNG or basically we do any kind of process like furnace gas or any other kind of gas, then it is an artificial gas. So we need to make sure that whenever we deal with any kind of fuel, how it is obtained, that matters a lot, right? So after knowing what is an artificial fuel and what do you understand by primary fuel, let's move ahead to the next point, which is classification or characteristics of the good fuel. Here we will take a look on characteristics of a good fuel. When we say fuel, it has to be a good fuel, right? Because only and only good fuel, because fuel contains a very heavy or very high prices. So when we use them, it should give us proper results, right? So to know that which kind of fuel and which kind of fuel to choose, we should know the characteristics of that kind of fuel. So here, let's take a look on characteristics of a good fuel. Here, the fuel should be easily available. The first and foremost characteristic is it should be easily available to any person, to normal person also. Then we move ahead to the second characteristic, right? So it is not like that if we have a particular fuel which is obtained at certain part of a country and we use it on another part, it gives us zero benefit because the transportation cost make it non-usable or make it a nominal one. So we need to make sure that it should be easily available to normal person, whether it's a natural gas, whether it's a petrol, whether it's diesel, whether it's coal, peat, cow dung, etc. These are normal fuels, and because of that, they are available mostly to each and every person, right? Let's move ahead to the second characteristic, which is it should be dry and should have less moisture content, right? As you all know that the water content or the moisture content decreases the efficiency of the fuel. It decreases the efficacy of the fuel. So it should be dry, it should be less, or it should have less moisture contained in it. Dry fuel will always increases, or dryness increases fuel's calorific value. Calorific value, we will see it in our next session, that what is the meaning of this calorific value actually, right? Now, third characteristic and foremost characteristic is it should be cheap, it should be easily transportable and has high calorific value, right? Calorific value means whatever we burnt, opposite it, how many calories we obtain. On combustion, how many calories we actually obtain. And it should be higher in number, right? It should have easy transportation, easy storage phenomenon or easy transport property also. It should be cheap. If it is cheap, then and then only normal person can utilize it. So it should be cheaper one, right? Fourth one, which kind of fuel should be known as good fuel? So it must have moderate ignition temperature and should have less ash after combustion. Why moderate? And why not high? Why not low? So ignition temperature means the temperature at which it got ignited. Understood it here properly. If it has a very high ignition temperature, then we need to give it very high temperature or very high energy in order to ignite. If it has very low ignition temperature, then it is very dangerous to store such kind of fuel. We can't transport them because it requires a lot precautionary measures. It requires a lot of care, right? So it should have moderate ignition temperature, not very high, not very low. It should ignite at a moderate speed also. If it ignites at a moderate speed, then and then only it will give us a very good result, right? You need to make sure. Next point is it should produce less ash after combustion because it creates pollution. We all know that as much as less or as more as the ash is produced, it creates pollution. So it should produce less and less pollution. For that, we need to make sure the ash content should be less, right? Next one is the characteristic of the good fuel should be the combustion speed of the fuel should be moderate. Again, as I said, the combustion should not be very fast. The combustion should not be very slow. It should be done at a moderate speed. If it is being done at a moderate speed, then and then only it will give us a very good calorific value. Then and then only it will give us good energy. A very good amount of energy is obtained from it, right? Then next one or next property is it should not burn spontaneously. Why? Because it gives rise to fire hazards, right? If it should burn spontaneously, then as much as we store or as the temperature is raised or as soon as a very small thing will go near to it, it will burn itself, right? And if it burns spontaneously, then there are chances that it will blast. And if it blasts, then it's not good for that particular fuel. Okay. Now, next characteristic is its handling should be easy and should not give poisonous gases after combustion. Again, the point of pollution came into the picture. It should not produce a very high amount of poisonous gases. Although we all know that when carbon is burnt or when carbon network is broken down, at that time it gives rise to particular kind of compounds. It produces ash, it produces gases, it produces pollution, right? But a good fuel should produce it into limited amount, in very less amount. Then and then only you can utilize it. Okay? Then and then only it will known as a good fuel. Otherwise it will not be known as a good fuel. Okay? Next is its handling should be easy and should not give poisonous gases. As we all know that it should be handled easily, right? Then the combustion of good fuel should not be explosive. That means when we combust any kind of fuel, it should give rise to an average speed, or it should give rise to an energy at a particular speed. It should not give rise to an explosion. If it explodes, then that particular energy is wasted. We can't use it, right? So if we can't use it, then it will not known as a good fuel. Okay? Let's move ahead to our next topic, which is solid fuels. Let's take a look on them one by one. The first is solid fuel. So the main solid fuels are wood, peat, lignite, coal and charcoal. Right? These are the main, or these are the important ones. Right? So from wood we obtain peat, from peat we obtain lignite, from lignite we obtain bituminous coal, and from bituminous coal it gets converted to anthracite. This is the cycle that how a solid fuel gets converted from one form to another form, right? In this manner the sequence move ahead. Let's take a look on coal first. Coal is a fossil fuel which occurs in layers in the Earth's crust. Right? It generally occurs in Earth's crust. It is formed by the partial decay of plant materials accumulated millions of years ago and further altered by action of heat and pressure. So it is generally produced by pressure, heat, temperature, etc. Right? It's layer by layer process. Remember it quick. Okay? So what is the peat? Let's take a look on them one by one. First is peat, right? So peat is also known as, or basically it is a brown fibrous jelly like mass. Okay. Second is lignite. The peat gets converted to lignite. So these are soft, brown colored, lowest rank coals. Okay. Then we have bituminous coal. Bituminous coals are pitch black to dark grey coal. The color is continuously changing as you can observe. Okay. And the last but not the least is anthracite. It is a class of highest rank coal. That means it gives rise to a very high amount of energy when it is burnt or when the combustion of anthracite is done. It gives rise to a very high amount of energy. Okay. This is all for this session. Next we will see it in our next session. Thank you so much everyone.